Hey guys, this is Kerry, and in this video we're going to be making a JavaScript calculator. So for example, if we take 12 and 4 and we add them, we want to get 16. So I'm going to be sending you guys some starter code that contains kind of all the HTML and CSS for this file, but none of the JavaScript. So let me save that, give it a refresh, and now what you'll see is none of our buttons are actually functional. So you're going to be coding all of these buttons, and I am going to be coding one of them. So I'm going to start by coding the plus button. So in terms of thinking about what we need to do to make this plus button work, we need to do a couple of things. We need to select all the fields that we're going to be using. So I know we're going to be using these two number fields. So let me start by selecting the two number fields. Now when you select a field or select an object, whatever you want to call it, you can go to the toolbox and you can think, well, what do we use to select something? I should have called element. There we go, that's the right word. So we're going to be using document.querySelector because that's the tool we use to select an element. So we go in, we grab this tool, and we're going to put that here and here because we're going to be selecting two of these. Now in addition to selecting those elements, we're also going to be selecting the buttons. And in my case, I'm only going to select one button, but you probably are going to be selecting all 5 of these buttons. So you can start with one and then figure out how you would expand that. And then the last thing is when we push this button, we need the answer to appear in this answer little box here. So we're going to be selecting the answer area. So I'll do one more document.querySelector. So now when we're selecting these things, I see that the numbers are going to be coming from these two input fields. So it's going to be the A number and the B number are going to be the things, actually, and these aren't quite the numbers, because we're not getting the numbers themselves, we're actually getting these whole input fields. So I think a better choice here, instead of A number, probably would have been A input and B input. And so in order to select those, it looks like the thing that makes this one special is it has an ID of A, so we'll do hashtag A for ID of A. This one will be hashtag B for ID of B. So this will actually give us the input field itself, that whole element, not the number inside. We're going to get the number inside in a second. Next up, to select the buttons, it looks like the first one is going to be the add button. So we're going to select the thing with add button as its ID. And I can't think of a better name for that other than add button, so let's call it add button. Next up, the answer area is actually not the answer area, confusingly. I should have probably called this as answer paragraph, because inside of this there's the paragraph called answer, and that's this, but then there's this green little area here which is the answer paragraph. So let's select the thing with ID answer paragraph, and I think it makes sense to continue calling that answer paragraph. Okay, so now we've got everything selected that we're going to be using, the two input fields, the button, and the answer spot. So the next part is to start adding some interactability. So when we click this button, we want the answer to pop out here. So that sounds like an event. So we go to our toolbox and let's grab an event listener. So we copy it and create an event for clicking on the add button. And we paste in, using pretty paste, Command-Shift-V, the event listener. So now the element that we're interacting with is going to be this add button. We want that add button to listen for a click. And the function that we want to run when we do this is we want to take that input field, and not the whole field itself, but actually the value from inside of that input field. Now this isn't something we've used a lot, but to get the value out of an input field, I think we have a tool in our toolbox. I see I use the word value quite a bit, but it says for finding the value of an input element here. So it looks like what we need is this. So the first thing we need to do when we add these is we need to actually get the number, the value from this field, and the value from this field. So get the values from the two fields. So the name of the first field is not element, the name of the first field is A input. So go to A input and get the value from it. Go to B input and get the value from it. And I think I'd like to just call this A for the first number and B for the next number. Now, the next thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be saying that when you take these two things, we want the answer to be this thing in this case because it's the add button, plus this thing. So let the answer equal A plus B. And then the last thing we need to do is we need to actually put that answer somewhere. So let's put that answer inside of this field right here. So when you change the inside of a field or the inside of an element, that's going to be changing the inner HTML of that element. So we go to our toolbox and it says for changing inner HTML. So we grab this tool. And what we want to do is we want to insert the answer, this value, into the inner HTML of a certain element. So the answer paragraph, we don't want that to be empty anymore. We want the answer paragraph's inner HTML to be equal to whatever the answer was that we computed. So let's take a look at our app currently and debug it. So 25 plus 11 should give us 36, but it gives us 2511. And let's try that one more time. 3 and 6 gives us 36 instead of the 9 that we expected. So hopefully at this point you can see what the problem is. When we're adding these things, it's not treating them as numbers, it's treating them as strings. So there was a way to debug this in the HTML, but I wanted to debug it in the JavaScript. So when we go and we get the value from the A input, that value is currently being stored as a string. So what we need to do is we need to say, let A equal the number version of that value. So here we were thinking of it as the word 3, the string 3, and when we do number to it, it will become just the number 3. So then next up, B is going to equal the number version of whatever the input value was. And now what we're doing is we're forcing it to interpret this as a number and this is a number by putting number and then parentheses around the value that we want to convert to a number. So let's see how that works. So 3 and 6, this gives us 9. 13 and 22, this gives us 35. So now, because we're casting it as a number, we're converting it to a number, it interprets it correctly as a number. So hopefully this is enough of a start for you to figure out how to add functionality to the minus button, which currently does nothing, the times button, which currently does nothing, the divide button, and the mod button. Seems like a lot of work ahead, but I think it should be an interesting little project for when you have time to do it. So see you guys in class. Bye.